What is a zero export meter? In this video I'm going to explain that because of popular demand that I had on YouTube. This video is going to contain a little bit of a fan noise from these inverters that are running at full capacity right now. So I apologize for that. This is a zero export meter. It's a special device specifically designed with two C-clamps in the electrical panel to be able to read the power usage in your house and talk to these inverters, which I'm going to put a link at the bottom of the video. These are grid-tie inverters with power limiters specifically designed to only produce as much power as you have demand in your house. Therefore, the name Zero Export Meter. Here's how it works. The C-clamps inside the meter are wrapped around the lines that are traveling throughout my house. Because of that, it makes this system a lot more legal than the other systems because you don't have to interfere with anything that is not yours. Everything that you are touching, it is behind your breakers, behind your power meter, therefore you're not breaking any laws. Once the C-clamps are hooked up to the wires, every time you have a load and on any of the plugs inside the house, that wire will start pulling energy. The C-clamp will sense that and will send that information to this zero export meter. And this meter will send the commands to the inverters to produce power. Now, the meter is set up on number 3. Why? Because it divides everything by 3 because I have 3 inverters. If you have 2 inverters, this one will divide by 2 and it could go up to 10. What that does is that through these data cables that comes in from the meter to these inverters, there is information sent out for the inverters to only produce so much power. Electricity always takes the shortest route possible, and therefore these are behind the meter, closer to where I need the power, and what this does, it will be sent directly to the device that requires the power without coming from the meter. Perfect example, right now my house is using 660 watts. It's a third of that on each inverter, so about 220. As in the name suggests, zero power export. Why? Because I don't want to send any power into the net. First of all, the meter that I have, and the majority of the meters, if you send or get power through it, it will still count it against you. So if you're sucking power in, obviously you have to pay for it. But if you're sending power through, you still have to pay for it. That's how the system is designed. For those people that are selling power back into the network, they have a secondary meter that takes care of doing the math between how much you used and how much you produced, and that second meter costs an additional fee. So it's better to not sell any electricity back to the network because, first of all, you'll pay for it, not actually sell it if you don't have a secondary meter, and also for the secondary meter you have to pay for it, a monthly subscription fee every month. And to make things worse, you're only getting about 1 to 2 cents for the power that you sell compared to the power that you buy at 13, 14, 15, 60, whatever. They made it that way that it's not worth to sell your power out. So what you want to do is you want to drag it inside the house, put it into your batteries, and then store it over here for wherever you need it. And these inverters are specifically designed for that. Now, why am I not completely disconnected from the power company? The reason is very, very simple. These inverters can produce up to 2,000 watts, all 3 combined. That means that if I have a load that is 1,500 watts, each one will produce 500 and therefore my load will be covered. But if I have a load like an air conditioner that uses 3,000 watts, then I can only produce 2,000 watts and the other 1,000 watts will be seamlessly pulled out of the network without any switches or any delays. These will compensate only as much power as they can produce and everything else will be pulled out of the network. How much is my power bill? Well, the minimum that you could get is $18.50 because that's my monthly subscription to be hooked up for the privilege to receive power from the network. And I need that because these don't work without the actual active network. These synchronize to the network, and as soon as the network goes down, to protect the linemen, they will lose power automatically. So what happens is that if everybody loses power on the street, if you have the system, you will also lose power, but there is a way around it, which I'm going to cover in a different video. Because you obviously have the power over here, but to protect the linemen, it's specifically designed that way so you will not send any power through the network. But also there is a little bit of a leakage. Leakage happens when the zero export meter gets the information that it needs to ramp up the production because there is usage in the network. And then that information has to be relayed through these data cables to these inverters, and these inverters have to go up a little bit and then produce more power. Because there is a little bit of a time delay in between the time you ask for power and then you get the power, there's a little bit of a couple of watts that always escape and you pull them out of the network. Because of that, I have a consumption of about 0.5 to 0.7 kilowatts a day, which is about 7 cents or 10 cents of electricity that I cannot compensate for. This is the nature of the beast. I could compensate for 95% of my energy needs, but that 5% always escapes because that's how this system works. 10 cents a day for 30 days is $3, and then my power bill only gets into the $20s, $25 a month, depends on the usage. In summertime, when the AC is running at full power, I don't have enough solar to be able to compensate for all of it. So during summertime, I'm paying $50, $60 worth of power, but then in all the other months, I am paying nothing. I produce most of the power that I use, but I still have to pay my $20 to $25 power bill because I have the privilege to be able to pull power out of the network whenever I need it. So instead of a $2,000 a year power bill, I have a $250 to $300 power bill every year, which is awesome. Let me show you real quick how it looks like inside the panel, because people are wondering how those C-clamps look like. This is my meter right now, is not sending or receiving any power whatsoever. So it's completely locked in the middle, which is good. Arrow here means that I am getting power out of the network. Arrow that way means that I am pushing power in the network, which I don't want. So right now I have zero consumption, even though I have 600 watts consumption in the house. These are the C-clamps right now. So the panel is a 220 volt split phase. So how does it work is that I have 110 on one side and 110 on the other. I found all the lines that are on one side of the panel and I put a C-clamp on them, or the CT clamp. And then I found all the other lines and then I CT clamped them on the other side. So basically what I'm doing right now, I'm reading all the power usage in the house with the CT clamps and I'm sending that information through these cables inside the house. Also, I have two separate lines over here which are hooked up and separately fused here, which are my inverter lines. And these are important. I'm going to explain to you why inside. As you can see, these inverters are plugged into outlets over here on top. And these outlets are corresponding to their own breaker inside the panel. One is on the left line and one is on the right line. So each phase has its own breaker. Actually, there are two very, very important reasons. One is a safety concern. So if you would produce power with these inverters on the line that you're already using, if there is a 10 amp breaker on that line and you're producing 5 amps with each inverter, basically you're adding 5 amps worth of power behind the breaker, and therefore you're overloading that line. Theoretically, that line can catch on fire. So if you have separate lines, everything has to travel through breakers, and therefore you're not tampering with any of the power usage on any of the lines inside the house. So you have to have separate lines for these inverters. Also, if they're hooked up just to a regular line, it will skew up the data, because if you're pulling 500 watts and they try to produce 500 watts, that line will show 0. So basically they will produce no power at that point. So they have to have their own independent breakers with power lines coming in where they are producing power and pushing it through the house. But otherwise, the system is very, very simple and fully automatic. There is nothing that you have to do once it's hooked up and the switches are flipped. This zero export meter does all the reading for you, and then you have very, very, very little power usage that gets pulled out of the network. I hope this helped you out understand a little bit better of how this type of inverters work. I think these are the best solution for the type of the setup that you have to do, because everything happens behind the panel. You don't have to mess up anything in between the panel and the meter, or even before the meter, and that makes this entire system really the best solution for if you want to produce your own electricity. I have another video that I've covered all the other details as far as like how much it costs and how much batteries and solar I have. So if you want to watch that video, I'm going to link it somewhere in the bottom of the video for you guys. I hope this answered your questions.